Hey, buckle up for a story that'll hit you right in the feels. Picture a nurse, crushed under the weight of family struggles and a toxic workplace, who finds herself caring for a billionaire everyone fears. What if one small act of kindness could spark a bond that rewrites two lives? If you've ever felt life's burdens piling up or wondered if compassion can truly change destinies, this tale of grit, heart, and a jaw-dropping twist will keep you glued. Hit that subscribe button for more stories that inspire and uplift, and let's dive into Rachel's unforgettable journey. Rachel Reyes was a 29-year-old nurse in a bustling New York City hospital, where the hum of monitors and the sharp scent of antiseptic defined her world. As the sole breadwinner for her family, she carried an invisible weight: her mother's failing health, her younger brother Ethan's reckless choices, and the dreams of her two teenage siblings, still in school. Her father's death a decade ago had left a void, and Rachel's promise to him, to provide a better life for their family, drove her through exhausting 12-hour shifts. But the hospital wasn't just a place of healing, it was a battleground. Christina, a fellow nurse with a sharp tongue and sharper grudges, targeted Rachel with relentless hostility. The tension stemmed from a misunderstanding. A male nurse, Patrick, had once shown interest in Rachel, unaware of Christina's feelings for him. Rachel had declined his advances, focused on her family, but Christina's jealousy festered, fueling petty taunts and sabotage. One frigid November night, Rachel stepped out of the hospital at 11 p.m., the city's streetlights casting long, lonely shadows. Her bones ached from a double shift, but she pulled out her phone to call her mother. The familiar warmth of her mother's voice brought a fleeting smile, though it was quickly overshadowed by worry. "Rachel, I didn't want to bother you, but Ethan's girlfriend is pregnant," her mother said, her cough punctuating the words. "Her family's pushing for a wedding, and we need money for her checkups." Rachel's heart sank. She promised to send funds, hiding her own dire situation. Her paychecks were stretched thin, and she hadn't paid rent in 3 months. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll handle it," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. Arriving at her tiny rented room in a rundown apartment building, Rachel stopped short. Chains wrapped the door, secured by a heavy padlock. Her belongings, a worn suitcase, a grocery bag of clothes, a thin mattress, and a small pillow, lay in a heap in the hallway. Panic surged as she knocked on her landlord's door. Mrs. Paula, a plump woman dripping in cheap jewelry, opened it, a half-eaten hot dog in hand. "You haven't paid in 3 months, Rachel," she snapped. "Our deal was clear: pay or leave." Rachel pleaded. "Please, just 1 more week. I'll settle everything." Mrs. Paula scoffed. "I'm not a charity. Take your stuff, or it's gone by morning." The door slammed shut, leaving Rachel alone in the dim corridor. She sank beside her belongings, the cold pavement seeping through her scrubs. Fighting tears, she felt the weight of her responsibilities, her family, her job, her survival, threatening to crush her. With nowhere to go, Rachel dialed Emily, her best friend and fellow nurse. Emily's cheerful voice cut through the despair. "Rachel, what's wrong?" she asked, sensing the tremor in Rachel's tone. "I've been evicted," Rachel whispered, tears breaking free. "I'm on the street with my things." Without hesitation, Emily replied, "Stay put. Dad and I are coming." Half an hour later, an old pickup truck sputtered to a stop. Emily leapt out, wrapping Rachel in a tight hug. "You're not alone," she said. Her father, Mr. Larry, a kind man with weathered hands, helped load Rachel's belongings. They drove to Emily's modest home, a wooden house on a small lot, where Rachel was welcomed with open arms. Sharing Emily's cramped room, surrounded by her friend's younger siblings sleeping on thin mattresses, Rachel felt a flicker of relief amid her chaos. Life at Emily's offered warmth, but Rachel's burdens didn't lighten. She sent money for her mother's medicine and Ethan's girlfriend's prenatal care, draining her savings. At the hospital, Christina's attacks grew bolder. One evening, as Rachel grabbed patient charts, Christina leaned in, her voice dripping with malice. "Heard you're sleeping on the streets, Rachel. Guess nursing doesn't pay for your kind." The other nurses averted their eyes, and Rachel clenched her pen, forcing herself to stay calm. "Hand me the chart for room 208, she said evenly. Christina smirked, tossing it at her. "Don't order me around. We're not equals." Rachel ignored her, focusing on her patients, but each jab chipped away at her spirit. One quiet afternoon, while delivering paperwork to the head nurse's office on the 4th floor, Rachel passed a private room with an open door. An elderly man struggled to climb out of bed, his frail frame trembling. Instinct kicked in, and she rushed inside. "Sir, let me help you," she said, steadying him. He grumbled, "Just need the bathroom," but didn't resist as she guided him. She recognized him from hospital gossip, Mr. Hamilton, a 76-year-old billionaire notorious for his temper. He'd thrown a cup at Christina for lukewarm water, cursed at Emily over cold milk, and berated others for minor errors. Yet, with Rachel, he softened slightly. "Raise the blinds," he said, staring at the hospital garden below. "They're lucky to walk freely. I can't even do that." His voice carried a deep sadness. Rachel, no stranger to feeling trapped, replied, "Your worth isn't in your steps, sir. We all have seasons of strength and weakness." He gave a faint smile, asking her name before she left. "Rachel," she said, sensing a loneliness that mirrored her own. Days later, Rachel's heart plummeted when Miss Carter, the head nurse and Christina's aunt, summoned her. "You're reassigned to Mr. Hamilton. He requested you specifically," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Rachel's stomach churned. "Ma'am, I'm scared," she admitted. "I've heard what he's done to others." Miss Carter handed her his chart. "He wants you. That's final." The file revealed Mr. Hamilton's stage 4 pancreatic cancer, his body too weak for further treatment. Pity mingled with fear as Rachel entered his room, finding him frail and hooked to an 4. "It's you," she said, surprised. "Took you long enough." He snapped, but his tone lacked the venom she'd expected. She introduced herself, checking his vitals with steady hands, her compassion overriding her nerves. Rachel approached Mr. Hamilton with meticulous care, adjusting his pillows, explaining medications, and wiping his fevered brow. Noticing he had no visitors, she bought orange tulips from a florist's stall to brighten his room. "No one's ever brought me flowers," he said, eyes glistening. Rachel smiled, changing the subject to spare him embarrassment. One morning, his despair erupted. He swatted his medication tray, pills scattering across the floor. "What's the point?" "I'm dying," he shouted, voice raw with fear and loneliness. Rachel sat beside him, unflinching. "You're still here, Mr. Hamilton. Your life matters. I'm with you," she said, her words drawn from her own struggles. He fell silent, tears falling, and took the fresh pill she offered, a flicker of trust forming. As their bond grew, Mr. Hamilton opened up. He'd lost his only daughter, Lily, to a heart condition at 6, choosing a business meeting over her final hospital days. His wife left, blaming him, and he buried his grief in work, amassing a fortune but no joy. "I've got all the money in the world, and no one to share it with," he said, voice trembling. Rachel took his hand. "You're not alone, sir. We care about you, not your money, but you." Her sincerity pierced his defenses, and he smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. One morning, he made a startling request. "Rachel, will you pretend to be my daughter for a day? I want to feel like a father again." Tears welled in his eyes. I'd pay you for your family. Rachel shook her head. No payment, Mr. Hamilton. If calling you Dad makes you happy, that's enough. She pleaded with Dr. Roberts, a senior physician, to discharge him for a day. It's his final wish, she said. Despite the risks, Dr. Roberts agreed, trusting Rachel's care. The next morning, they set out in his chauffeured SUV. At a riverside park, Mr. Hamilton reminisced about picnics with Lily, watching kids float paper boats. Rachel steadied his frail frame, her arm a quiet support. At an old ice cream parlor, he ordered her favorite flavor, smiling as she called him Dad. In a bookstore, he bought her a novel, inscribing it, "To Rachel, my light in the dark." At a mall, he insisted on buying her a floral dress, shoes, and a bag, his face glowing with fatherly pride. "It's been years since I've spoiled someone," he said, his voice thick with emotion. They laughed over ice cream, shared stories in the park, and browsed books, each moment knitting their bond tighter. Rachel saw past his wealth to the grieving father beneath, and he saw in her the daughter he'd lost. As evening fell, they returned to the hospital, both fighting tears. "Thank you, my child," he whispered, squeezing her hand. "I'll pray for more days, Dad," Rachel said, her voice breaking. She left his room, sobbing in the hallway, the weight of their connection overwhelming her. The next morning, Miss Carter delivered devastating news. Mr. Hamilton had passed in his sleep from a heart attack. Rachel ran to his room, now empty, and collapsed on the bed, clutching a pillow as grief poured out. Emily held her, but the loss echoed her father's death years ago. At his wake, in a grand home adorned with white flowers, Rachel mourned among a small crowd, his driver, a few staff, no family. At the burial, she laid tulips on his grave, whispering, "You gave me a father's love, even for a day." The loneliness of his life struck her, but she cherished brightening his final moments. Back at work, Christina's jealousy erupted into a vicious rumor. Rachel had seduced Mr. Hamilton for his wealth. The gossip spread like wildfire, stinging Rachel's heart. Emily uncovered proof, Christina's recorded confession to other nurses, admitting she'd lied to ruin Rachel. In the stockroom, Rachel confronted her. "Why drag his name through lies?" she demanded. Christina smirked. "You'll never belong here." But Miss Carter, her aunt, overheard, her face dark with anger. "You've disgraced yourself, Christina," she said, firing her on the spot. Rachel felt no joy, only pity for Christina's bitterness. Days later, a lawyer arrived at Emily's home. Mr. Hamilton's will left Rachel a Montana farm, a Colorado vacation house, and a substantial bank account. "He said you showed him true compassion," the lawyer explained. Rachel hesitated, feeling unworthy, but recalled his words. "Good hearts receive great blessings." She accepted, using the wealth to repay Emily's family, buy a home for her mother and siblings, and open a flower shop and cafe. Yet she continued nursing, her calling unshaken. Visiting Mr. Hamilton's grave, Rachel laid tulips down, tears falling. "You taught me kindness is the real treasure," she whispered. Her hardships had forged her strength, and her compassion had transformed a lonely man's final days. Rachel's story wasn't just about survival. It was about the power of love to rewrite even the darkest chapters, proving that genuine care can ripple through lives in ways we never expect.